This computer. All right. Hey everyone. Thanks everyone again for joining us on our third Friday webinar dealing with AI renders in iClone and Character Creator. We have James Martin and Max Thomas coming to us from Atlanta, Georgia, both professors of practice at Georgia State University. And they're going to be showing us some really cool stuff to deal with video AI. We're going to be using WAN a little bit today, I believe. If you are familiar with all this stuff, you probably have seen the outline for the webinar, so I don't need to show that to you. But I have a few promotional things I need to go through before we get hand over the reins to Max and James. They're going to show us some really cool stuff, so just bear with me. For those of you who are not aware, we do have a Q&A at the end of today's webinar. So any questions you have throughout the webinar, please put those in the Q&A panel in Zoom there, and we will get to those at the end of the live demo. Anytime you can put them in there. We won't be answering questions really from the chat. I mean, you can go ahead and feel free to chat in the chat there and keep it clean as always. But yeah, we'll also be sending out a survey at the end of today's webinar for you guys. Make sure you fill out that survey for us. Give us some suggestions for future topics you want to learn about, anything you want to say, and we get a 10% discount code for the content store, stackable on top of all of the other coupons as well. Let me go ahead and share my screen really quick. We got a few other things to take a look at. Let's share this screen here. Screen two. All right, so you should be seeing my screen right now. This is the forum. We did a update 5 days ago for the plugin. So make sure you're up to date on the plugin. All the information is here in this forum post. I'm going to throw this into the chat for you guys. So you have it. Hello, Santo from Thailand. Got people from all
Nice.
over the place. Good stuff. Yeah, you can see all the information here. Again, we just updated it a few days ago, so make sure that you're on the latest version. And now you can use it with Character Creator 5 and all the other latest updates of the iClone and Character Creator family. All right. And for those of you who are new to Character Creator 5, or maybe you're not even new, but you want to participate in this, we have a giveaway. It's your chance to win the free HD Ultimate Morphs content pack if you
Mhm.
submit your character to this forum post. Okay. So I'm going to throw this forum post in the chat as well. There you go. So make sure you check this out. And any character you create, just throw it in there. We got some really cool stuff already sent up for people who are just beginning. So these are all just beginners for the most part. Don't feel shy. Don't be shy. Just feel free to post your creations in there and get a chance to win the HD Ultimate Morphs, which is this content pack here. Some really excellent morphs. If we can get rid of this pop-up here. Some really excellent morphs that will, help you tremendously when it comes to creating your characters in Character Creator 5. You can see all the crazy variety, every small little detail. You can create all sorts of different types of characters. You can explore this stuff on your own time. I don't want to blab on too much, but you can check that out as well. And as always, we have an educational discount. So if you are an educator or a student, feel free to apply here for the 60% discount on all of our software. That's the highest discount we offer. Lovely to have you guys here and using the software at a discount. We try and get that. So if you have a student ID or a teacher ID, anything like that, make sure that you apply here and get the discount for your software there. All right, I think that about covers my part. I don't think there's anything else for me to say other than here's James, here's Max. Anything you guys want to say to introduce yourselves?
Sure. What's up, everybody? I'm Professor of Practice and the CEO and Technical Director of Actor Capture, but Professor of Practice at Georgia State University, along with Max Thomas. I was the first certified trainer here, running the iClone and Character Creator Gambit for many, many versions, and super excited to see us kind of dive into CC5 for everybody today.
Right on.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Professor of Practice Max Thomas from Georgia State University. I'm also a virtual production specialist, do a lot of AI work with new open source models, trying to push the bounds of kind of what we're able to do with ControlNet, LoRAs, and being able to maintain consistency. It's been so much fun working with the new AI render beta from Real Illusion And I'm super excited to dive in today and take you guys through a little bit of the journey of kind of how we got to where we are with the video workflows currently, and hopefully give you some super cool tips to help you get up and running and make this possible for you to run it on your own. So, essentially, what we're going to be working with today is a model called WAN 2.1 Fusion X. So this comes in a lot of different variants. You can also get this in quantized models. So if you have less VRAM than what we're going to use today, you have options that are available to you that may be a little bit better fit for your specific GPU. So if you're that's for mostly people that are running on local versions. So I'm actually gonna fire everything up today a little bit in the cloud and also a little bit of stuff local. And I'm gonna kind of feature this Q8 version of WAN 2.1 text to video. So this is a really super powerful model, and something that actually is really, really cool about it is that VR game dev girl 84 is a longtime Real Illusion user. So it was something that was awesome to find out when the model dropped that same day that the person that made it actually had been using Character Creator and iClone for a long time and been a part of, creating assets for the store and all kind of really cool stuff. So you never know who's already playing with these tools, and sometimes it's somebody that you already know that has the latest and greatest thing out there for you to get your hands on and play with. So it's been really, really exciting to play with this model since it came out. There's a lot of, new versions of this and, such as WAN 2.2, but it doesn't have ControlNet yet. And so that's why we're still focusing in on kind of that WAN 2.1 range because we want to be able to utilize ControlNet like our depth maps. We want to be able to use our pose control and we want to be able to use our canny values to transfer everything from iClone over into Comfy UI and then have that basically reflected in our output of our render. So, today we're going to start our journey out. I just wanted to kind of show you where this model existed on Hugging Face. It's also, available through GitHub for you to pull as well. So today we're going to dive straight in and we're just going to be working with Kevin since you guys already have access to that LoRA. But we're going to start out in Character Creator 5 today instead of Character Creator 4, which is super awesome. Been playing with it a little bit this week. I hope you guys have too, and have, really got in there and got to have a little bit of fun. So we will spin up a RunPod, we will spin up RunComfy, and I'll talk a little bit about your GPU and VRAM requirements depending on what you're trying to do and the resolution requirements and length requirements that you may be trying to meet. And like I said, there's so many different custom workflows. You may have a workflow of your own that you've been playing with that you're ready to get integrated and up and running. So I'm going to show you what kind of I've been doing and what hopefully we can get you up to as well today. So just kind of showing you a little bit about what this looks like in an API version. We're going to play essentially with a combination setup where we're going to take Flux One Dev, which we learned how to use in our first webinar, and we learned how to kind of create those custom LoRAs. And now we're just going to add the additional workflow so that you can move from just an image-based workflow into an image workflow to video. So it's really, kind of completing that step so you can start playing with these super powerful models. So I just have this up kind of spinning locally, but that's not where we're going to, run things to begin with. The first thing that I want to do is kind of hop over here into Character Creator 5. And I've just went in and pulled up Kevin. I went on and grabbed him from the characters pack that I went on ahead and downloaded as soon as I got started with CC5. We're not really going to worry too much about changing his wardrobe or going too crazy, but it's super exciting to, know that we have the ability to have that compatibility with not only just metahumans and other character rigs like that, but also having that extra high detail and being able to just have that additional face count on our characters so we can get extra high quality details in whatever our use case may be. So super excited to start playing with it and build in some new characters of my own to play with. So a lot of fun there. I'm going to go on ahead and send Kevin on over to iClone the same way that we did Camilla originally. And if I was looking for Kevin to begin with, I basically just kind of dove in and went to my packs and chose the characters pack that it asked me to pretty much download as soon as I dove in. So if you're kind of wondering how I got that, you also could just search for Kevin or Camilla, and they're gonna pop up pretty easily for you right here in the characters tab. And so he's been with us since CC3 plus, so that's really exciting there. But let's send him on over to iClone and get started there. So I've already got iClone open in the background, but I'm gonna send Kevin.
And don't forget, with Character Creator 5, you've got lots of other options that are now available to you for compatibility with skeletons in UE5, the Fortnite editor skeleton, and lots of other things that once you apply that animation to your character rig inside of iClone, the world opens up even wider with CC5.
I'm gonna go on ahead and pull my chat window off. I just realized I left that up there for you guys. So one thing that I want to do is, I don't want him to just be standing around. We're going to animate him today. We're going to make a video. We're not just making a still, so we don't just want to pose him. And we have this wonderful tool called iClone that makes that really easy. So I kind of knew I wanted like a fight or a kick motion, and so I'm going to kind of just dial right into what I want, and I just want like a super cool kind of kick action, something that has maybe a spin to it. I think would be really fun. So how about the spinning kick high motion here? This looks nice to me. Oh, I don't have that one. Lovely. Let me pull back up a little bit. Okay. Um, 1 second. Let me I actually have this set up real quick and I'll just run a camera on it just to make sure. So I used kick combo one just to make sure that I actually have the one that I'm using is this kick combo one. And so I'll pull that out just to show you and not kind of cheat the process there. So I'll add that kick combo one since I have that in my library and ready to roll. And I think it's a really fun animation. I'm going to drag that back to frame 0 because that's where I want to start at. And the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of pull my camera back and preview, what's going on here. So let's watch that. I think I have my camera animated here, so I'll have to get rid of those keyframes really quickly. But don't worry, if you're looking for your camera, should be able to just come over here to the left and it's gonna be a little checkbox so we can add that. And this is just because I had some previous animations here, and that's perfectly okay. We're gonna go back to Kevin. And so, ideally, guys, like you're not going to be able to do a massive amount of frames. Like you can't just go put like 10,000 frames in here or even 1,000. Like, I mean, like you got to be much more realistic than that, to be honest. The majority of you might want to probably start at like 51 to 81 frames and try, 16 FPS or 24 FPS to start out with, depending on how much VRAM you are running and depending on, how much, compute capability that you have necessarily. So if you're running something like an RTX 6000 Pro that has 96 gigs of VRAM, you're going to be able to get away with a lot. And especially with some of the new long length video features that you can expand to that are even more complicated than this workflow, are going to bring more additional features. And I know you're excited to get in there and run the biggest, latest models, but I think you should kind of get your feet wet and play a little bit with some of just like basic 2.1 VACE. And even going in and creating things that are just like image-based generations is good practice, just so you can learn how to prompt and see how WAN 2.1 is going to affect your model, um, or affect your output and kind of what's going to come out of it based on that. And that's one thing that I found early on with working with WAN 2.1 is I felt that, it is it will readily accept the prompts that you feed it, and it's going to almost like overdrive that effect to the point where you can almost even overpower your control net if you really want to, especially in terms of like camera control and little features like that. So you want to be real careful with keeping your prompts simple and not focusing so much on redescribing your characters and how they look, because we're going to handle that with our image workflow and just focusing more on the motion and what's going to actually happen. And so in this particular instance, I can play this animation and he's going to do like a spin kick. And, I'm going to need to set some cameras up for this so that, I can work with the shot. And so I'm only going to work with like 80 frames, like frame 0 to 80. So I'm just going to come in here and get him kind of posed where I want him to be. And I do have a look at constraint on Kevin's head here, which is something I should kind of show you guys too over here in your modified tab. Um, Let me click on not his shirt, but Kevin himself. And
He's awesome.
so basically all I essentially did here was just said, look at camera. And so I have Kevin essentially looking at the camera because, by default, sometimes those animations won't be focused in and looking at where you want them to. So we got to respect those eye lines and make sure that they're right so that it doesn't come across weird in our final render. So I've kind of took that additional step to make things really easy on myself. But the nice thing is that since I have my camera here, it's going to auto key things as I move through the timeline, which you guys should probably be, quite familiar with from using iClone. And if you're new to it, that's okay too. It makes things really easy. So I'm going to get that kind of framing where he looks like he's kind of getting ready to get into a fight. He's going to throw that kick and do a little bit of a spin. And we'll see if when he spins around, if he's still Kevin or if maybe he's somebody else. You never know sometimes, but hopefully our tricks will kind of help hold that together. And we'll talk about what you do if that doesn't happen. And, you need a little bit of additional control where we can introduce things like video LoRAs. So, LoRAs on LoRAs on LoRAs. So much fun. So I'm going to sit right here at this 80 frame base. I'm going to just kind of pull over to the end and just kind of reframe things. Let me make sure I don't have those any keyframes on this anymore, which it looks like I do from moving it around, and that's okay.
Also,
Let me,
inside of iClone, anytime you're editing inside the timeline, if you have that second icon active or object related track, anything you select, whether that's a camera or a character, that's auto populating onto the track list on the timeline. So you don't have to continue to kind of comb through that. You can do this through the scene tab as well.
and so I'm gonna let that work. I actually want it to be a little bit tighter. I want it to be a bit of a tighter shot than that. So let me test that one more time and just kind of look at that, make sure I'm happy with my framing, that I'm not losing his head or anything that I'm that worried about. And so I'm okay with that. I can work with that. So this is going to be my 81 frame render that I'm going to use. And so I'm going to use this source video and I'm going to use the ControlNet tools inside of iClone once we hook up our AI render beta. But for now, my project's just kind of locked. Everything's waiting on me. It's ready to go. I'm just going to come up here and save it. And then I'm going to start working on getting everything set up to get my AI render beta going with a super powerful GPU so I can run this thing.
Hey Max,
So,
what frames per second are we at right now? Chris asks in the
oh,
chat here.
yes, yes, that's a great point. I was going to talk about that when I pulled up the AI render beta. But so I run everything at 24 in here. Like I like to go as low as I can just so I can take advantage of that frame range. Let me click my little settings tab here for projects. And you should see I have my FPS set here at 24. And I also will set that FPS to 24 inside of the AI render beta when we pull that tool up. So super important. And another great thing to kind of be aware of is with your camera, like so if you're trying to adjust this, currently if you're playing with depth of field, and you're planning on using a depth map, I won't turn this on if I'm going to use depth map because it creates kind of haloing in the render a little bit because it affects your depth map generation depending on how you have it set. So if you're using pose, you might can get away with that in your base feed. But considering we kind of want a clean plate and we want to take advantage of the pixel data that we have, like maybe don't turn this on for your AI renders for now. So just a tip while we're in the camera, and feel free to change your lens settings as well. If you want a 35 millimeter, you want a 24 millimeter, whatever you want, that's fine. 16 FPS is great as well. I saw we had a comment on that. I really do like 16 FPS. But one thing is that I kind of I think we'll see probably in the future is maybe a base at 16 FPS possibly would make that really nice to be able to transition 16 to 16 because I want that control to be 1-to-1 and not necessarily like interpreting 24 to 16 all the time. But that's totally okay. Like you're just gonna what's actually nice about rendering at 16 is you can reinterpolate things in Comfy UI using custom nodes that basically will allow you to essentially get more length out of your frame range. So sometimes it'll make things look a little bit slow motion, but it just depends if it fits the shot well for what you want or not. But for this particular instance today, we're going to run 24 to 24, like straight up. So, and you can go beyond 81. I'm just keeping that at a good sample. That's kind of the range that the model was trained on, so it's a good default spot to start at. And even if you're later, running one of those extended length, like long length video workflows, something that you should really be aware of there is that you can just run it in 81 frame batches. So you kind of stay at what works best for the model with that base rate of 81 frames to get everything up and going for that. So I'm gonna fire up RunComfy first so I can get that up and going. So I can go through and show you how to put all the models in there. The process for adding the models on RunPod will be very, very similar, but it takes a little bit longer to get that up and going the first time. So for now, I'm going to fire up RunComfy from the template that we've been using the past 2 weeks. So I am going to run a workflow for this. And, I could get away with probably this 48 gigs of VRAM. That would be acceptable to run most of these high-end video workflows. But if you really want to throw some horsepower at it and you want to get stuff done a little bit faster, you can consider things, that have like 80 gigs of VRAM or more, or you can also consider options that RunPod have for you. So for today, I'm just going to fire up this 80 gigabyte machine. And I'll just lock that in at like 2 hours, and I'm going to let that one spin up for me while we get things going on the RunPod side. So with your cloud computers, you guys, we have to initially load things up, whether it's RunPod, RunComfy. We're launching a new machine and we just need everything to get set up and ready for us to use. And it'll play a nice little sound for us when it's ready. So we can easily pop back over from RunPod and get that going. So RunPod, just as like with RunComfy, you'll need an account for that. And with RunPod, I'm going to actually take advantage of I'm going to run an RTX Pro 6000 for $1.97 an hour here with 96 gigs of VRAM, or you could consider like the H100 for $2.39 an hour. And these are both like really great competitive options if you want to kind of knock video down pretty quickly and get things done in an efficient manner for these like large models. And so you can totally run quantized models that will run on like a 4090 or a 5090 or even like an RTX 6000. RTX 6000 ADA will get the job done for quite a few things. So for this particular case, RunPod, we have a couple of additional steps here. It's not going to be any different than what we were running before. So I have one here that I will also spin up that is got everything downloaded. So we'll get two of them going at once. But the first thing that I need to do to be able to get my RunPod going is I have to have storage, just like with our image workflow. So I'm going to dive in here and I'm going to run. I know that they've got some nice GPUs here in Montreal, Canada. So we're going to go up there to visit Kai's neck of the woods and find a GPU up there. And so we want to get a hold of one of these RTX 6000s or these RTX Pro 6000s before they're all gone.
No tariffs on that, right?
Um, yeah, no tariffs yet.
Okay. Good to know.
Take off, hoser.
We only charge those coming the other way. I'm just kidding. No, but Real Illusion RunPod 02. I'm gonna give this thing like 200 gigabytes because I'm rendering video. You can go 100 if you want. You'll probably be perfectly fine. But I like to be safe, and these models are bigger, and I might want to pull more of them. So I'm going to give myself some space to work with. Like I said, you may find that the Guff model does a good enough job, and that you don't really have to, like it does. If it does a good enough job for you, you don't have to worry about that. So let me go in here and I'm going to create this network, and it's going to give me 200 gigabytes at $14 a month if I keep that up. So if when you're done with the storage, if you don't want to keep it going, you can delete it and it'll stop charging you instantly. It doesn't just charge you like $14 the moment you click that button. I've been showing this to a lot of new people, and that was one thing that I saw that people got caught up on is they thought that when they clicked that button, they were about to get charged $7 instantly or $14 instantly, and that is not the case, guys. You're getting charged like a penny an hour or something like that. Like it's much more inconsequential amount for that part of it. The GPU will charge you though. You fall asleep with that on, and you're gonna run your pod down. Um, so I'm gonna click on Reallusion, RunPod 02, and I'm gonna deploy this with a volume. And so I have to have the location of where I want that at. My storage and my GPU have to be in the same location, and that's why we set that up that way. And so I'm going to go back into my additional features and I got to make sure that I have the correct version of CUDA to run this. And for this instance, we're going to run CUDA 12.8. That's what's being supported for the template. So I'm going to fire that up and get things going shortly. So now I get is the fun part that everybody like jumps to immediately and skips the boring part about setting up the storage and all that fun part. And so what we're going to do, guys, is we're just going to go on ahead and choose our GPU. So I'm going to rock the RTX Pro 6000. If you want to run something a little bit more economical, like that'll get the job done, you can totally, there's a little pocket of GPUs in Washington that are pretty good that I've been using as well. So they've got some regular RTX 6000 ADAs here that are running 12.8. So if you're looking at a little bit more affordable option, that's just a little bit more expensive than the 4090 you were using, and it'll get you going. So not everything has to be the super scary 599 B200. Um, so I'll pop back over to my pod where I am going to use the $1.97 an hour RTX Pro 6000, which I mean that's 96 gigs of VRAM, guys. That's a lot of VRAM. If you can't get it done with that, it's probably not happening. So I'm going to change the template, and we're going to look for our Reallusion template. And the one that I'm looking for is the Reallusion Comfy UI AI Render Full Latest template here. There's also another one, but go on ahead and lock in that one that says full latest, and that's going to ensure that you have all the models for like the SD 1.5 workflows or additional things that are already built in case you want to deploy some of those, or maybe you run into a few issues trying something more advanced and you just need to get your feet wet trying some of the basic models and learn how to use that a little bit before you dive into the more advanced stuff. So, but for those of you that are ready, let's march on. I'm going to name this thing RLRP02, and that's just for Reallusion RunPod 02. There's no real purpose. You can name it Bluefish 32 if you want to. It's your pod. You can name that computer whatever you want. Um, so I do need to edit my template. And so I showed you guys how to set up Hugging Face tokens, but I'm going to show you again one more time, just in case you may have forgotten how we did that or have forgot that process. So I'll come back here into my container disk and I'll set a few things, and then I'll show you how to set up a Hugging Face token as well. So I'm going to go in here into this container disk and I'm going to set this thing to 100 gigabytes because I just want plenty of clearance for the large models that I'm going to download. So now we need a couple of environment variables that we need to set. And I already have a Hugging Face token, so I can click that and I can add it right now, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to show you how to make a new one. If this is your first time running the template, you must download the models that you want to use. In this particular instance, you now will need Flux and you will need FusionX WAN VACE if you want to run this workflow. So I'm going to put this to true for Flux, and that's going to give me my images. And then I'm going to set Fusion X1 Vase to true as well. And that's going to download the F16 version of this model. If you want to run one of the Guff models, you're going to have to download that yourself, which can be easily done from GitHub pull or something that we can definitely probably work on, seeing if we can get integrated if that's something you guys are really interested in, and it's maybe having a couple of access to a few of those more quantized models. We'll see, depending on what you guys are liking, are really enjoying using. So I'm going to lock in those images, I'm going to lock in those videos, and I'm going to set that override. And we are not good to go yet, guys. We have to have this Hugging Face token. And so this is a really big deal. It'll mess up and ruin everything for you if it's not right. So I'm going to go to Hugging Face. I forgot the G, but it's all right. It'll still take us there. The internet's pretty smart. You have to create an account. That's the one thing you do need to do through your email. And you also, once you've created that account, before you start using this access token, it's very important that you go in to like the Flux One dev page for Black Forest Labs. So go to Black Forest Labs Flux One dev here, and you're going to want to make sure that you have been granted access to this model on your pod, because if you haven't approved this, then your Hugging Face token may not work for you. But you're basically accepting the license to use this model and saying like, hey, I'm not going to go do illegal things with this or things that I'm not supposed to do against the model's license. So once this is clear and it says gated model, you've been granted access to this file, that's going to let you download those full weight models. The FP8 version, not so big of a deal. It'll let you pull it without doing that. But so we've went through this one kind of hurdle. We've got over that, and now we're ready to set up an access token. And so it may ask you for your password again to get in there, and you can see I've got like all kind of Hugging Face tokens here from doing this a lot. But I'm just going to come in, I'm going to create a new token. We want a fine grained token. And for this one, I'm just going to call it, and you want to keep this simple, guys. Don't put spaces, don't put dashes, don't make this like 50 characters long, or it will fail. I've seen this happen. It wasn't something that I ever really thought about doing, like putting dashes in it, because I use a lot of camel text from working in Linux and things like that. I just never use dashes. Um, but like that's one thing you want to avoid, because we are running on Linux systems, and for some reason I have um, seen some people try this, and it did cause their whole thing to fail literally just by having dashes in that name. So hopefully this is something that'll help get you guys up and running. So I'm just going to call mine oh 06, because I doubt I have six of them, but that's what we're going to roll with. I just picked a number. And I know I have a Hugging Face token oh 01. So you need to come to your repositories, the first tab, and we have to check the first two boxes. And that is going to be for read access to contents of all repos under your personal namespace, and read access to contents of all public gated repos you can access. So we need that access here, and we're just going to come down and create that token. And once we've created that token, we have to have one more layer of authentication. There's always another gotcha. It's just how it goes. So we're going to copy that. And luckily, you only have to set this up once with your RunPod. After that, you don't have to do this anymore. So if you did this with the image workflow, you're already good. You do not need to do this again. The one you have is already fine to use. No worries there. So I like to leave this tab alone because I'm lazy and I don't want to come back and type all that in again. That's just a lot of extra work, scrolling through that page and clicking all those buttons. It's a lot of stuff. So instead of that, I want to come over here to my secrets tab, and I'm just going to open that up, and I'm going to leave everything alone over here. I'm not going to touch it so I can come back to it, and we're going to find that secrets, and I'm going to create a new secret here, and I'm going to go create that secret. And this is that value. If you need to see where I got it again, guys, it's right over here. It's our Hugging Face access token. I'm going to copy that just to show you one more time. I'm going to go to that new secret, and I'm going to paste that value right there. And so that's that token that I will delete after this. So I'm going to name this HF token oh 06, and you could put a description if you wanted to. You could say like, this is for a demo, delete me later, whatever you want, whatever helps you remember what you need. So I'm going to create that secret, and it's going to establish, and it's going to say there's a RunPod secret, HF token oh 06. And so now, since I left my other tab up, I can just come right back here and go back into that edit templates one more time. And I'm going to drop down that environment variable tab, and where it says HF token here, I'm going to tag that in. And so I could use either one. We'll use the one that we just made just to show you that it works here. And we'll honestly probably switch over to my other pod. I'll fire it up too. It'll take just a few minutes to get it up because it's already set up. But this first time you run this, it's going to take a minute, guys. Like this is a huge file, and this is a huge file as well. And you have all the Comfy UI initial installations. There's a lot going on here. So you also have all your clips. You have your VAE encoders. Like there's so many different things that it has to have those dependencies. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to set those overrides. And just to check it one more time, I have increased my container disk size to 100 gigabytes. I've went in, I've established my HF token. I came down to the bottom and I have set that I want to download Flux to true, and I have set FusionX WAN VACE to true as well. So I'm going to set those overrides, and just to confirm everything again, I like to go back and make sure I have storage. I've got a location that's in the same place. My CUDA version is 12.8. I've chosen a GPU. I've locked in all of my settings for my template, and I'm going to deploy on demand. And so you can always watch things over here in your logs once they get going, and that'll just be your computer starting to spin up and download everything. And once you've fired it up, guys, you're starting to pay. Like, we can come over here and see the details that between the storage and the GPUs, I'm paying, about $2 an hour right now. So, you start getting into video, it gets a little bit pricier, but that's where all the fun is. So, um, a lot of really cool stuff here. So I'm also going to go back to my storage and you'll get to see me fire one up. So like, let's say that you've already done this and you've already worked for a whole day and you shut everything back down. You came back the next day and you're ready to launch a pod this way. So you've already downloaded everything. This is going to be my Real Illusion RPO1 that I already have set up here. So I'm choosing my other storage. I'm deploying this pod, and this is just so this one will go faster for me. And so I'm going to also launch that on a RTX 6000 Pro. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to type in that Real Illusion template again and get the full latest version. And I want to edit my template. And the second go around, life is a little bit easier for us. We could probably leave the container size at 40 gigabytes. It's probably not really going to matter so much. It's tempting I like to make it 100, but I'm gonna refrain. I'll leave it at 40. So I'm gonna plug up my HF token just to make sure everything's good. Since I've already used the HF token 01 with this pod, that's the one I'm going to associate with it again. I do not need to download Flux. I do not need to download FusionX WAN VACE, so I'm going to set them to false. You can also probably go up here to this SD 1.5 photorealism and set that to false if you wanted to. I'll just let it run, doesn't matter. Set those overrides. Make sure it's set to 12.8. I almost didn't do that, but it is at 12.8 still. Um, Name it unless you want it to be three crazy words that it puts together. So RLRP01, since I have an O2 already, and I'm going to deploy that pod, and this one should be up a lot faster than the other one. And then I'll show you how we can kind of load these workflows in here, and then how we can export them and set them up in iClone so that they work there. All right. So all those are spinning up. And so I already have some workflows in here, but I'll take them out so that I'm not kind of cheating the system. So I'm moving back to RunComfy, guys, like just to show you here. I'm leaving those run pods the same way we left RunComfy going. I'm going to let these guys process in the background. And when they're ready, I'll come back here to connect. And I should have a little bit more information here to look at and the ability to do so. So I'll show you that when we get back to it in just a few minutes. But let's switch gears and go back to our RunComfy instance, which is essentially just another option of a cloud GPU service that you can use that is a little bit like significantly easier to set up, I would say, to begin with. You don't have to go through all those steps. It may cost you a little bit more, but if you're struggling with the RunPod, if it's really like just causing you issues and you can't figure out how to get past that, my advice would be maybe switch over to RunComfy, play a little bit, come back once you get your feet wet with the basics of what you're trying to do, and then maybe establish that workflow on that little bit more advanced workflow setup with RunPod and save that additional money there. If that works for you, or use RunComfy, use whatever tool you like. Like I said, I'm going to show you all three today. I'm going to show you some RunComfy, some RunPod, and then I'll run something local because I haven't really done too much of that for you guys either. So I think that's, a lot of fun to show you that you can run it on your own computer. It doesn't have to be in the cloud if you have the power to do so. So that being said, I can always check over here in my storage and make sure that I have what I want. My LoRA should already be in here because it's saved them for me. So I already have like Camilla and Kevin and May from the last time I ran this. I believe Kevin and Camilla are already coming shipped with it. You won't have May, I don't believe, but that's okay. You won't really need it for today. All you need is Kevin. We're not even going to use Camilla today, so I figured we would make Kevin throw some punches instead. So that being said, I need my custom workflows, and so I have a few custom workflows set up for this. And for this particular instance, I have like some pod versions and some local versions, just based on I have a couple things that are installed a little bit differently. And so I like to load up everything and kind of look at it first. So I have a Flux One Dev workflow, which is our image workflow that we talked about in the first webinar. And then I also have a FusionX VACE version 2 workflow. So this is my video workflow here too. And it's pretty looks maybe a little intimidating in API format because it's not all labeled for you and like in a super easy to understand format, but it's really the same routes. We're tapping in to the system through our RL AI render UI core node, which is going to have a base prompt that we can put in for Flux here, or sorry, for WAN. So this would be your negative prompt. This would be your positive prompt. If you want to lock those things in, you could do that. I'm going to give you guys a custom version of a version of this workflow to have access to on the forums, but I want to make a couple more tweaks to it and make sure there's like one final thing that I want to confirm tonight before I give it to you, just to ensure that everything goes smooth. It's working great on my local setup, but my personal workflow, I've seen one or two things that didn't maybe do exactly what I wanted to in the cloud, and that's just something that I need to dial in and tighten up on that and make sure that it's identical before I put it in your hands and expect you to use it. So it should be essentially the exact same, maybe one or two little things in here I may tighten up for you. Things are always updating in Comfy, and that's something you got to realize too, guys. Like these are new workflows, these are new versions of Comfy that are coming out all the time. The models are going to change. The people that are creating the custom models may maintain them and they may not. So, particularly like one issue that I kind of ran into this week, and I think it's important to kind of talk about stuff that you run into because you should know that everything doesn't always work out perfectly for me when I want to run something. I have to troubleshoot it. I have to figure out what's going on with my workflow sometimes if something doesn't work the way I want. And I think it's important for you guys to be able to see kind of how easy that process is once you kind of wrap your mind around it. So one thing that's really nice is inside of your history folders when we generate these images coming out of iClone is that you get a pre-workflow and your actual video workflow in that history folder. So you might be trying to figure out how do I fix something whenever I can't necessarily run this front end until I have some history established inside of Reallusion. And the way it is, just get things set up, trust the process. If you get it over there and something goes wrong when you got it set up, you can easily drag that workflow back in and run it again because your history will be established, and that'll allow you to highlight any errors in the workflow and attack them and kind of knock them out and dial things in for your custom setup. And so in this particular instance, there was a new updated version of the float node that I was using. And so I had ran into an issue where I couldn't get one of my workflows open because there was a float node that was depreciated. And so we ended up having to update that and run it with the Comfy UI Easy Use node because it has a more established kind of dependency chain, and it's just a more updated node that's going to support it. So that's kind of little things like that are really not that complicated can be painful if you don't know what's happening and you don't know how the system really kind of works to get through it to begin with. So, if you are facing struggles and you are running into problems, know that like most people working with AI out there are still figuring a lot of these things out and learning these methods and establishing it. But that's what makes it exciting because it is a new frontier and it is that, kind of, knife's blade of exciting new tools that you can push and experience, both the successes and learn from your failures and your mistakes to be able to produce better content. So we can inject LoRAs for video the same way we do with images. I want to talk about that, our low rank adaptation files. I've told you guys, like in a couple of the work of the webinars that I think that the image is basically 95% of the workflow. I think if you can get your image right, then video is basically the same process repeated, but just moving to something that's moving. And we're going to use essentially depth maps and animated post control, and it takes a lot longer. So, like, whereas you render one image or 10 images or 16 images to get to that result, like we don't think so much about seed searching being that big of a deal. And we're like, oh yeah, I generated 10 images and I got to this one that was perfect. But I had like eight that maybe were 80% or 90% of the way there to getting there. And I think that's the reason people experience problems with video and learning to work with these video workflows is because you can't just iterate at that level. You can't just fire off 16 video instances and then kind of seed search it and see what you get without a lot of processing and a lot of effort going into that. And so I think that as computers get faster, GPUs get faster, um, you're going to see these things get a lot easier. But so we're injecting LoRas the same way we are with images. We're also going to inject our control net coming over from iClone, and we're using something called WAN VACE to video. And so this is what we're really waiting on to start playing with WAN 2.2, and that super exciting new version of WAN is we need something that can allow us to pass through our open pose and pass through our depth and our canny or whatever type of control net that we may be particularly trying to inject into that workflow. In this particular case, these are the options that we're supporting here. And also we're using our reference image as our first frame image to kind of drive what we're creating. So we need the image to be perfect, and then we're creating either pose tracking, depth maps, or canny to help control the AI generation and make sure that it follows that. And so just to show you like an example, I'm sure you guys have kind of been getting in the tool and just seeing what you're able to do. Um, so for one of the fight scene that I did for like whenever I was creating the webinar video, one of the things that I realized, is depth maps are extremely powerful, but sometimes you also need a little bit of help from your pose control. And so um, you may not be able to dial everything in frame by frame, yet and ensure like if your characters move really far back in the scene or really close in the scene, you may need a little bit of help from additional sources. So I combined something like that depth map with something like this open pose generation. And you can see that also struggles like with something complex like this fight scene where there's a lot of character overlap. Um, Whoop, it's kind of freezing up on me there. I'll play that one more time for you. But like, so we can see that character, you know, it loses some fidelity. But so what we're doing is kind of balancing our control net the same way we do with images, but with video, so that we can kind of control what that output generates. And just to show you, it doesn't always turn out exactly like you want. Like you might get really good contact and then get to a point like this where your character turns around and because you don't have a video LoRa, they change clothes. Like I want to show you some of that stuff too because it's things you can run into and you may be like, well, I trained a LoRa, I did all this stuff. Why can't it maintain that? Why did she start wearing Kevin's clothes? And that's because, that LoRa is injected into your image workflow. If you want to have that level of control through your video to be able to spin around and for the video model to understand that that is Camilla still, then that's where we go to an even more advanced setup where we're actually training a video LoRa and an image LoRa so we can maintain her consistency all the way through both platforms. And it's AI. Occasionally you're going to lose a few frames and you shouldn't think of like every shot as a loss. Sometimes, you may be able to get your action out and just, cut to another shot or give another way to kind of break things down. So, definitely lots of ways to kind of work with your control net. And so now that we have everything up, let's talk about how we can kind of get this thing exported so we can set it up in iClone and start to look at what we would need to do to render an image to video workflow there. So while I have everything inside of RunComfy or inside of my RunPod, either environment, I want to kind of check first my image workflow, and I want to go find my models and make sure that all of my models are there. So I'm going to go down to where my diffusion model is and where my dual clip loader is and where my VAE is. And I'm just going to ensure that they are in that workflow and that they're actually, correctly assigned. So I can go clip, we want that clip L safe tensor. We want that T5XXL. And more than likely, this is all going to be fine. It's just, you're investing a lot of time into rendering that video, and there's a lot of complex steps. And I think sometimes, just taking that extra time to make sure everything's good can make your life easy. So I'm going to just use Flux One Dev safe tensor this time. There's tons of models here because this is RunComfy, and there's a lot of stuff installed that you have access to. So sometimes that can make things easier for you to play with other workflows a lot easier. So I'm also going to go into the load control net model here. And I like to double check this and just make sure, because, the way I've installed it on my system, I could have it downloaded it and it's inside of a Flux folder, or I could have downloaded it and put it into a custom folder of my own, or the name could be different. I could have named that to just like something custom. There's nothing that would have stopped me from doing that. And so you just want to ensure that that's locked in and that the workflow that you're using is what you actually intended to use. And so now that I've got everything locked in, I've basically integrated that Flux workflow. I'm okay to go on and save this if I want to, and then also export it. And we always export as API. So super important. So I'm just going to call this one, Flux One Dev Demo, just so I have a different name on it. And that's going to pop up in my downloads folder. And we'll just let it live there for just a second. And then now I'm going to go over and I'm going to do the exact same thing to my video workflow. And this is just, a good, especially if you're using workflows that somebody else gives you, you should make sure that everything's named the same, because it's just not worth the hassle to not going ahead and address those things. And so in this particular case, we have our clip up here, we've got our VAE, and I need my diffusion model. And so it's not right at the bottom like it was at the last time, like everything's not together. But I do know that, my diffusion model is going to be over here. So this one is actually not the one that I want to show you. This is the Guff model that I'm going to run locally to make it run a little bit faster. And I could easily just swap that out, but I just want to put the right one and start you in the right place here. Sorry, it's in my pod version. And let me grab that and I'll just plug that in and make sure we're good. So exact same setup. I know that this probably doesn't have that Guff model installed, so I'm gonna actually use what I'm using here is this WAN 2.1 text to video 14B FusionX VACE FP16's safe tensor. If you use a Guff model, you have to actually use like what that other workflow that I just showed, and I'll show you that again. Let me pull that in. Um, Oops, wrong tab. So, oh, not that one. This one. So I'll just show you the difference. And it's just down at the bottom. And the only difference here, guys, is this is allowing me to run that quantized model. So I have to use a little bit of a different UNet, like a UNet loader, and it actually goes in a different file folder instead of that diffusion models folder. So this is just allowing me to run that kind of quantized faster model there. That's going to get things done a little bit quicker. There's also tons of LoRAs that can speed things up, possibly at the sacrifice of quality. But that's where you have to decide. Are you trying to get the absolute best thing you can? Or are you okay with, lowering the quality of your model and being able to render more videos faster? If it's just something for like Instagram or social media, you may not have to put as much, love and care into it if it's like a full cinematic piece for a movie or a video game cinematic or something like that you're trying to plug in. So that being said, that's just kind of two different ways you can run it, and I wanted you to kind of be aware that you would need that Guff model and a different type of loader system if you want to use those models that are going to be supported on less VRAM. So in this particular case, I'm just going to check things. Oh, sorry, that's my Flux workflow. Let me check this on the VACE. I want to check the Fusion X model, make sure that's in. I want to check my clip. We only need a UMT5 XXL FP16 safe tensor for this. Can also add the WAN 2.1 VAE safe tensor as well for that. And so that's going to get all of my models loaded up. I've just made sure that everything's locked in. We don't have that extra union control net going on for this. We're using VACE, which is a different node. So that being said, it's all ready to go. I can come up here. I can save things, and I'll just call it Fusion X VACE demo. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to export that API so that I have that model ready for me to go. So I did see one question about how I follow the spaghetti across the flow, and that's because I'm mostly looking for just a few core essential things. Like even though this is it looks a little wild in API format, I know down here at the end that I'm going to combine the video. I know I'm going to have a K sampler that's basically going to process everything. And then up here is going to be my control net, and that's just kind of how it's laid out in every one of these with my pose, depth, canny, and then my reference image. And so if I'm trying to visually understand like how I'm going to break these down, I can pull these out um, and just kind of look at them that way. And then I pull out my LoRA, and then the rest of this is pretty much just allowing me to load in um, my video paths and things like that that are being sent over from iClone and how I'm breaking that down so that I can not only resize the source imagery and things like that that I'm using to match my source clip from iClone, whether it be like in this case I'm only going to run like 1280 by 720. If you're trying to run on a lower weight GPU, you may have to run like 480 or something like that to even pump videos out. Videos take a lot of horsepower, and that's just kind of where a lot of the stuff is right now. But so really, I kind of focus on sorting out control net, sorting out where the LoRas are being injected, and then how I'm gonna plug all that up through the custom Real Illusion control net nodes. And so all of this stuff is over here in your node library. If you come over to where it says Real Illusion here, you can see that I have access to all of these custom nodes here. So you can just kind of build out your own custom workflow and inject the front end of iClone into essentially whatever you want to build and whatever type of models may support this type of control net injection. And that's something that you have to kind of be considerate of is if the model doesn't use control net, it's not going to help you to inject it like that. Um, and so I did see like some people talking about color coding. You can color code the stuff. That's totally cool. But one thing you should know is that when you export it as API, it's going to lose all that color formatting, I believe. I don't think it comes over with it. It may, like we could see, I guess. Just for a test, I'll do it real fast while we're here. I'll turn these all yellow for control net. And we'll just see because that may be an easy way to help. And let's just see if we drop it back in if it maintains that or we'll drop it in another version of Comfy. I have another instance of Comfy running as well. So just to show you, let me pull up that download folder really, really fast here, guys. And we'll just drag it in. No, see, like when you bring it over, when you use API format, it won't maintain the colors. It's kind of just what you have to do for this. And super easy, thing to kind of show you. You can work with it in color and you can export a version. Like, so if you want to have a working copy, just export it traditionally and then export an API version to inject into your workflow in iClone. All right, let me go back to my RunComfy setup here and we'll pick up where we left off, guys. So I've got everything exported. I already have everything out and ready to work with. It's not going to run this workflow that I just dropped in here. We actually have to still add this to iClone once we connect it. So if you're running RunComfy, the way that we connect this up to iClone is you have to come up to the top where your web browser is, and you need essentially this last bit past where it says server slash. You have to copy this information here. And there's a specific template that you have to use. And so it's basically HTTPS semicolon or colon forward slash and then you basically put that server code there, and it's just dash comfy UI runcomfy UI.com or runcomfy.com. And so that information and that template is also available in the forum post for setting up RunComfy if you want easy access to that. And so I'm just going to copy, this last little key here just to show you again. And that's the one thing that's remotely complicated about running RunComfy. That's pretty much it. Um, all right. So I'm going to go back to my little pad, and I just like to paste this here so I have access to it, and then I'll put it in my format. And I'm going to take that web link there that I've got for that, and I'm going to go back to Real Illusion. Sorry, we're taking us a while to get back to iClone, but we're setting up a lot of stuff. We're checking twice as many workflows, and we got to make sure that everything's right. So a little bit extra work there, guys. I'm going to come up to my AI render tab up here, and I need to go on ahead and lock in some settings. And so the main thing that I care about is getting my connection and my history going. If you have a super powerful computer, you can run locally. You can run the version that installs alongside the AI render beta. I should look at my time, just see where we're at here. So I'm going to hop in on this LAN server, and I'm just going to paste that address in for run comfy, and I'm going to hit connect. And you'll see that established that connection. It confirmed it. It lit up green. We got Christmas trees, and we're good. So I'm also going to set up my history. So I think that's something important you also should do. So I'm going to come into, like this webinar 03 folder, and I'll just set up a history folder in there. And that's how you can control that. If your C drive is like slammed like mine and your computer is about to, like die from all the AI models you put on it, like I'll just show you guys, like I imagine everybody that's playing with this stuff locally is seeing similar conditions of their hard drive scenario. Um, this is heavy stuff. Like it's time to go buy those 4 terabyte drives finally that I've always been too cheap to pay for. So, we get some of those going. So we've got our history locked in. We've got connected to our server. We hit close, and now we're going to come back to our AI render tab here, guys, and we're finally ready to load up a custom workflow. And so you'll see that I already have one down here at the very bottom that's set up for my local setup, but I'll set one up for the pod as well. So you have lots of different templates that you can play with, and if you want to play with some of these things with your pod, go on ahead and install the additional required models from that list in RunPod, or just launch RunComfy, and all of this should be ready to go automatically out of the box. So I'm going to add a new workflow here. And in this particular case, like I said, we're taking things to the next level, guys. So we got to load our image workflow first. That's the first thing we need. It's the same as before. So in this particular case, I'll use the ones that we just exported um, over there from RunComfy. And so I have my demo Flux One Dev version here, and I'm going to click OK, and that's going to lock that in. So if you wanted to use a built-in video workflow, you have those options in your templates, but that's not what we came here to do today. We want to run that workflow that we just exported. So I'm going to go custom video workflow here, guys, and I'm going to click this button, and I'm going to come in and select my FusionX VACE demo JSON that I just exported. So I now have my custom video template plugged in, and I have my custom image template plugged in. And once you do this and your AI render tool launches up, you'll see that these workflows are gonna show up in the video side instead of image. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger for you guys. My screen's like 55 inches, so I know the text sometimes looks small. Um, and it just makes it a little bit more difficult for you to see. So for the display name, this is just where we're going to name things. And so for this particular instance, I'm going to call it Flux Fusion X, and I'll call this demo. And I'll just call this Flux and FusionX, just putting some notes in there. WAN 2.1, ControlNet, LoRA. And I've ran out of characters, so I can't put any more there. Taking up too much. So maybe we just go CNET. I want the A. I like it. So, and then you put your name in there if you want to. Um, and then we're going to set an image so that we can make everything look nice and pretty. And I gave you guys some during the first webinar to play with. I'm sure by now you've probably at least managed to pop out some 512 by 512s that you can play with for that. And so since I use the GTR icon, I'll use Kevin since we're using Kevin. Just to keep it simple for myself, you can add in a note if you want, and you click OK, and your workflow should now show up in the template so you can choose it. So since this is the one for my cloud instance, I'm going to go on ahead and click that and apply. And that's going to give me my AI render tool here. And so it looks very similar to what we were used to seeing with our image workflow, but now we're taking things up to that next level and we're going to move up the video. So just so that I don't forget, the first thing I want to do is go on ahead and inject those LoRas. And this is going to be for it's going to use these for Flux. It's not going to use these for WAN. If you want to inject these currently at the video level, you actually want to take care of that inside of your workflow before you export it. I think that's something we could see expansion to in the future, is that being a possibly a different setting. But for now, that's the way everything's is set up for you to work. So if you did have something that you wanted to inject on that workflow, just to let you know how you would do that, we would go up to our LoRa tab here, and I could inject, like there's like realism. There's lots of different options of WAN LoRa's. You can even come back and inject Fusion X as a LoRa. There's many of these available on VR DevGirl's page as well. So let me see if that's still there. I'll show you that you can get access here to your LoRa files. So there's other LoRas that are supported. There's a detail enhancer and a WAN 14B realism booster that are available there that you can download. Um, and then there's also ways that you can inject Fusion X as a LoRa and use the original just WAN 2.1 video diffusion model there. So, lots of different ways you can play with LoRas here. They can be characters or they can be styles, but they also can be used to make things faster or render in a particular way. Um, Lots of different cool use cases for LoRa's, especially at the video level. All right, so let's go back to iClone where we were at. I just wanted to discuss that. So, you're not going to want to go stack your video LoRa's here on top of your Flux LoRa's, or you're going to have a bad time. And I think that's something important that you guys should know about how that's set up right now. So my first LoRa, I'm going to go down and I'm going to get my Flux Realism LoRa, which this is on RunComfy. So there's tons and tons of LoRa's on here that have already been loaded up. So I have to kind of like file through it and look for the R's and try to find my Flux Realism. So many LoRa's on here that it's hard to find what you're looking for. And that's one reason I really do enjoy RunPod, just because it doesn't have so much noise. And maybe like you might like having all the extra LoRa so you don't have to download them and you just got tons of stuff to play with, like anime style and SD1 and all kind of things like that. But sometimes it just makes it a little bit to dig through. And so there it is, Flux Realism. Finally found it. It was up in the F's. So now I'm gonna look for my Kevin LoRa that's also installed. And so there's Kevin 26. And so I'm not gonna run these full weight. Like I know like that we're going back to image workflow here, but it's still part of the process. You got to be able to do kind of both at the same time. So I'm gonna set Kevin to like 0.55. Like I run him a little lighter than Camilla because his CG characteristics come out, I think, a little bit stronger, maybe in male characters than female. And so I dial them back a little bit. You can push it more if you feel like you need to, increase that strength or dial it back even further if you want to. So realism, I'm gonna actually run him higher than Camilla. Like I'm gonna inject like 0.85 realism injection on Kevin to kind of get him where I want him to go. So now I'm right back into that world where I'm playing with my control net, where I'm using things like depth and pose and canny, but they're going to be at the video level this time. So with depth, we don't run a full range. We're going to run that at partial, and that's just kind of 0 to 50% there. My strength value, I like to play between like 0.35 and maybe like 0.65. And ideally, I just kind of keep it about 50% most of the time. Sometimes I adjust it if I feel like I need to. The one thing you do really want to pay attention to, though, is your camera settings. So I don't think midshot's doing necessarily a great job for me, so I'm going to dial that into portrait. Still, maybe a little bit too hard edge. One thing I will say is like if I'm doing images, like I dial this in as tight of a narrow range as possible. If my animation is going like front to back in the scene or it changes depth in the scene a lot, then that's where I got to consider maybe, hey, I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of quality on my depth map to try to ensure that I have it throughout the entire animation sequence. And maybe I inject a little bit more pose to try to ensure that that's helping guide it where the depth map falls short or falls off. So I think that's still maybe a little bit too much. I'm gonna try like let's say like 5 to like 25 and just see what that looks like. See if I can get it just a hair softer, maybe to 20. See if we lose too much at 20. And so you can see at 20 we're starting to fade out. So maybe what I want to do is like 15 to 25 and see how that looks for me. And like I said, if your camera is changing distance a lot, you could lose your character. We can't go much tighter than a range of 5, so we could really tweak that and try to get it exactly dialed in. But for the sake of time, I'll let that ride, and we'll kind of see where we get with a 15 to 25. And we could lose our depth map and need to possibly process that again, but we'll get to see it render out as it goes the first time, so we don't have to run all the way through a video with a bad depth map or something that wasn't what we intended. So I've got that range kind of dialed in, and then I'm going to go into my pose, and I'm just going to dial the strength back. If you have this in at 1, it's going to definitely kind of, probably produce results that maybe you don't want. If you have that high of a strength value with that high of a strength value with depth, you're kind of playing and there's trade-off. If you need to lock in background, like if I had background scenery I was trying to add in, I may use edge or canny, or if I was doing something stylistic, I may inject that for those purposes. Lots of different reasons you may want to. I predominantly like depth. If I want them to spin around in a circle, I'm probably going to inject pose plus depth. Um, so this is just our default prompt. We're going to get rid of that. We're good to go on our control net. All that's locked in. Flux does not use a negative prompt. You can leave it in there. We have it set up in the workflow to kind of just fade that out anyways. So that's okay. From that aspect, we'll get a different prompt for our video. We'll have a separate prompting window for that once we get to that phase. So since we're not trying to go to 1080, we'll come back. We'll inject a prompt here as well. So I've already prepared one just for the sake of time, so you don't have to watch me type that out. And I'm just going to do an ultra realistic mid shot of Kevin, a 37-year-old Caucasian man wearing a worn green military uniform. And I'm saying that he is standing with his fist raised, prepared to fight. The background is a jungle with sunlight shining through the trees, movie scene, cinematic lighting, 50 millimeter lens to match what I'm running in iClone. I want to create shallow depth of field. I'm injecting my trigger word for realism and my trigger word for Kevin to make sure that those LoRAs are injected. And then I have just a few power words here like high quality hands, high quality hair, and we'll see what we get. I'm going to just paste that into my positive prompt. I typed it in quite a few times and I just decided to write it out so you wouldn't have to watch me type it out. So, for detail steps, like I said, typically if I was going to 1080 for image workflows, I would go up to 28. And sometimes I'll generate something at 1080 and then have a step in my video workflow to down res that back to 720 just so I can get that initial higher resolution render. Or I may do something that's portrait and then consider using something like outpainting to get different results there. So this is still Flux. We're going to run our CFG at 1. We're going to run our noise at 1. You can adjust this a little bit, maybe go You can go up to like 1.1, 1.2, but it's going to let your AI dream a little bit more. And then we get down to the bottom. We need to set our resolution. If you try to set this to like 4K or 1080 or something, you're probably just going to run out of RAM and crash the instance. Like that's very likely to happen. If you put too many frames in there, it's going to crash it. So you'll see that I've also blocked that out to 80 frames if you didn't have that here. You want to make sure that you have at least the amount of frames that you're going to generate with your vase like blocked out. Like so I can't generate like 30 frames and then expect to render out a 81 frame sequence or you're going to have problems. Um, so what I'm going to go for here is I'm going to go back to that first frame where I want to do my initial render. You'll see that I have the initial frame rate set to 16. I want that 24 here. And just to show you why, I got my project at 24 and I've also got my AI render set to 24 because if they're different frame rates and you line them up one to one, you're going to have, different timing than you expected. So 80 frames is not a very long render at 24 frames per second. Not very long at all, guys. Um, but we can get things longer, and there's other ways that get a little bit more complex that will allow you to kind of do that as well. So everything's locked in. I've got my Flux image workflow ready to go, and now I can preview. And so we'll see that that's going to, let me see if it'll allow me to move that out of the way. Oh, see, we didn't have enough range on our depth there, and we kind of lost them towards the end. And that's where, if we get a bad image that we don't like, something doesn't come across. Maybe our LoRAs didn't inject. Maybe I had something, in my prompt that didn't turn out the way I wanted. And so this is where our pose data is going to come in and save our butt where that depth map falls off. Like it's really helpful for us. And so that's just our iClone render there. And the first time you run it, it's just like the first time you run it locally in Comfy or anything like that. It's going to take a little bit longer. It's not an instantaneous process. All right, so we'll kind of let that go for just a second because it's an image. It shouldn't take too long. And then once we have a render that we like, or even something that we can just work with for today, hopefully we get a good result right out of the hole. But you never know. I think we'll get something hopefully pretty realistic here. Let's see. Loading in that diffusion model. And if you see errors here, guys, like if this kicks out and it says errors, or you have something going on, you can come over here to your console log and you can kind of see what's going on. And so, with the new updates to Comfy, I have been having I had like a couple of connection issues with my video workflow that I've been kind of hunting down today that I want to make sure is nailed down before I give it to you to share with you. Because I think that's important. I don't want to cause you more issues with, with that new update and all the things that are going on. I want to make sure that's really nailed down. And everything's been working like absolutely fluid every single time with my local setup. But I've had a few like disconnection issues when running video, and it didn't cost me my video render. So that is important to know. Like if you run into this issue currently, if that's something that happens to you, where you get the error that I'll probably be able to show you in just a minute with the video side since we're on RunComfy. It's not going to cost you your render. You just may have to temporarily pop over to RunComfy and grab that render from there and download it instead of it being in your history file. So don't worry, you're not losing your work. You didn't waste all your time. It just, there's like it could be something in my workflow. It could be something I did or something with the new update that it doesn't like on that cloud version versus my local version. And so, that's where, this is a open source platform where you can build your own workflow to do whatever crazy stuff you want. And things are changing constantly. So, just part of the game. Um, but I want to show you what that looks like, and just to ensure you that if this happens to you throughout the process, that like maybe it's just that your RunPod got disconnected or your RunComfy instance got disconnected or something in your workflow kicked out, that you can come over here and check your console logs, and it should tell you that error that's happened, and that can kind of help you confirm it. Another issue is like when if you get to like your dual clip loaders and if something kicks out and it fails at this point before you even start like processing, then you'll be able to know that like essentially something has failed and it'll tell you right here on screen. And when that happens, you just want to go back to where your history folder is that you've created. So in this particular case, I'll refresh this just to make sure it's there. And we'll see this is what's rendering right now, should be. And you can see all of that source material. So you have essentially your pre-workflow. So if something went wrong with the image side, it would happen inside of this workflow. Once we move to video and we fire that off, we'll get another JSON file here as well. And so these are the files that you want to drag back into Comfy UI that you can run because it has that history associated with it. And so let's see what we got. Pretty realistic. I think we got, it's pretty close to Kevin. Maybe a little bit of issues there that I would maybe try another render on. But, we got a watermark down at the bottom. That's why we have seed searching. We only try on one, but it's good enough that I'm going to run it for the image just so you don't have to watch me make another one. Um, Instead of seeing the thing that you came to see today, which is how to get to the video. So I'm ready to run this on RunComfy, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit my render tab. And I'm not going to actually let this render all the way through because it takes a little bit of time. Like it could take like 10, 15 minutes. And I just want to show you like kind of how to get this up and going so that we still have a little bit of time to answer some questions. So now you could choose to upscale this image or you can choose to render it to video. And so I've opened up that render tab. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger if it'll allow me. Doesn't look like it wants to allow me to do that. But essentially, you can see that that's confirming. Here's our FusionX VACE demo. And we need a positive and a negative prompt here for WAN. And so in this particular case, we don't need to describe Kevin again. We don't need to redescribe the jungle or whatever unless you want to change those things. If you describe how he looks, it's going to change things. It might not be Kevin if you inject too much. One thing I ran into early on is like I accidentally typed a couple prompts where I put in like I just said Camilla was a girl and I used girl instead of woman and she looked like she was maybe like the 16 or 17-year-old version of Camilla instead of like the 26-year-old version of Camilla. And if that's not what you intended to do, like it was cool to see that it could DH her like that, but it also was not my intention. It was more of like a happy accident that it still looked good and was a nice render. And so that's things that you'll learn along the way. And so Juan on the other hand actually does need a good negative prompt. And so I honestly just had ChatGPT kind of generate me one based off of my positive prompt. Like I'll drop the image in and I'll say I need a WAN prompt, or actually I got a really super awesome template for ChatGPT as well. Let me see if I can pull that up, or it's on my other window. But I got this from VR Dev Girl as well. But it's basically just a custom ChatGPT setup for popping out WAN cinematic prompts. Like that's really all it does. Like for example, it essentially is just designed for generating WAN prompts, and that's what I use to kind of give me what I wanted. I like to drop the images in if I'm trying to do quick work. If I'm really trying to define something and I'm not just testing things or trying to do like a demo, then I'm going to really go into it with intent in terms of what I'm trying to create. And so the first thing is I want to kind of lock in that positive prompt, and I want to kind of describe what the camera move is. Is it a pan? Is it a zoom? Is it a handheld shaky camera? What are we going for here? Is it a drone camera that's following over the top? You can kind of inject that into it. Um, I want to describe, what's taking place, but I don't want to inject anything necessarily about the physical description because I'm not trying to change that. I've already told it what it is with my image. I'm just going to describe that animation. And if you forget what you animated, even, and you're like, oh, I finally got the image I wanted. Now I need to figure out what to do video wise. You can always come back and watch your animation inside of your history folder and just see what you've created, right? And so in this case, we've just got like a little kick, and then he spins around, and then he's going to kind of do like a little punch and a knee, and just a little short animation, nothing crazy. And so I kind of did a base description of that, fed it to the WAN prompt, and gave it an image of my starting image, and told it what I was trying to do, and got it to refine that for me. But really, it's just all about keeping it simple on the positive side, and don't put your positive prompt in the negative, or you're going to have the opposite thing happen that you intend, and that might not be good, um, or definitely not what you intended. So I'm going to take my positive prompt, which is handheld camera follows a lone fighter as he launches into a spinning kick in a misty jungle clearing. The camera tightly tracks his motion with natural shake and subtle motion blur. As he lands, he drives a powerful knee into the air, then locks eyes with the camera. Um, Standing ready in a defensive stance, morning light cuts through the trees, casting dynamic shadows on the forest floor, volumetric lighting, soft backlight, enhanced intensity. Mood is furious, grounded, and cinematic. You can put it some power word injection, and you can also put in VFX, but be careful with your VFX. Like I like to use words like subtle on like pretty much everything. Because if you ask for lightning, it's going to give you lightning. It's going to like you ask for a small fire, and sometimes you might get like a roaring, like the whole world's on fire scene if you're not careful with how you inject it. If you're like, I need huge, powerful fire, you're gonna get it. Um, but so I'm gonna copy that positive prompt in. I'm just gonna put that in for myself, and then I'm also gonna inject that on the negative prompt. And so I did the same thing. I gave it my positive prompt, and I asked ChatGPT to essentially form a negative prompt for Juan based off of that. And in this particular case, it knows that I'm trying to do something realistic, so it's putting lots of things like cartoon and anime and 3D and CGI and stuff like that in because I want something that's more realistic. If you're trying to do something that is cartoony or is more, like animation style, then you're probably not going to want to inject these words into your negative prompt, or it's not going to do that for you. It's going to try to do the exact opposite. So let's put that in. We're going to plug that up. And once you're happy with your positive and negative prompt and made sure that you plug them into the right fields, you can come over here and confirm, and that's going to fire everything off. Well, you have to name it um, demo O1. You can put it in a location, but it's really going to typically just put that in your storage. But so I'm going to let this go through just to show you like the issue I ran into currently with my RunComfy side that, like I said, I think should be a very easy fix. That's just something because we've got all new updated versions. We've got new templates. We got new Comfy UI version that's came out. So, a few tiny little tweaks in beta, and this is still going to work for you, but there's a chance that if your RunPod somehow loses connection to the instance that it could you know, possibly like look like it's errored out here, but still working in RunComfy currently. And like I said, I'm not having any of these issues on my local setup that I've been rendering, but I have had a few like issues where I've lost connection a few times with my pod, whether that was maybe because I was streaming on Discord or doing something else or running lots of other things that could have happened. So I think that it really has to do with like this newest version of Comfy UI that they've made a few changes in there that just need a few tweaks to make sure that my custom workflows or your custom workflows that we were maybe using last week or the week before are up to date and ready to go. RTX 6000, that's what I got going on over here for card wise right now in this machine. Also got like several other machines with a lot of different GPUs that I test. So I advise like if you're gonna really try to run these heavy video models, I would advise really honestly having at least 48 gigs of VRAM at your access. I wouldn't really try to do this with anything less like try to render at 720p or try to even render up to like maybe 121 frames. Like you can get by with up to probably like 121 frames at 48 gigs of VRAM. And so like I'm not always trying to target like the highest GPU. Like sure I do a lot of work where I may use like an H200 or I may use an RTX 6000 Pro or whatever GPU that I need to get the job done that I'm tackling. But, a lot of times I'm teaching this to students or I'm teaching this to new users and people that might could be scared away by like having to use something that's so expensive while they're trying to learn the basics. And I think, hey, like there's nothing wrong with rendering at 480 for a little while or testing images at 512 or using these quantized models even down to 1.3 so that you can essentially just generate, whatever you want within the power that you have access to. So, don't be bummed out because you don't have a $27,000 GPU like an H200, like not many people in this world do. And, even a 5090 is barely good enough to do most of this stuff. Like you're probably running a quantized model on most of that. And so I wanted to show you this. Like I think it's fair to show you issues I've run into sometimes and that you shouldn't panic. And like this is where you're like, oh my gosh, I've worked so hard, am I going to lose my work? No, you're not going to lose your work. It's okay. I just want to show you this so you can see, and I'm sure this will be fixed by the time I ever even get to talk about it again. But it's real. And I think it's important that you guys understand that everybody that's playing with these tools runs into issues. Like not it's not a real illusion thing. It's a that RunComfy and I mean sorry that Comfy UI and all these open source models are changing so rapidly that you have to kind of be able to adapt to that new frontier and really just kind of get a basic understanding of how it works so that you can start to try to tackle the specific task or the specific style that you want to chase, because none of us are necessarily going to be like making the exact same thing. We're going to all have our own kind of different ideas about where we want to go. But so you can see that this is running in another tab. So I can come over here and I can pop that bad boy open, and I can just like watch it essentially from my logs and RunComfy and make sure that I'm still getting my results. And you see that it's still running. You can confirm up over here in the top left that that image is still being created in Comfy UI. And you can also confirm, that if you basically that things are just still processing. I thought I forgot I wasn't on a RunPod for a second. I was about to go look at my gauges and see how much RAM I was using and stuff. But RunComfy is really solid. We just let that go. It's gonna chew through this. So I'm running WAN FusionX at 12 steps. Most people I see these days are like even VR Dev Girl said run it at 8. Like a lot of people like to run this at 8 steps. It'll save you even more time. But me personally, I think like after rendering all the videos I have with it, I like the way things look better at 12 than 8 or even 10. Like that's just what I personally like. And like I said, you may want to save the time and render yours at 8 steps instead of 12. But you don't need near as many steps with Fusion X as you do with just WAN 2.1, so that can save you a lot of time. So you see that's rendering, and this is a really fast GPU, so that's going to get that done pretty quickly. Um,
Do you want to maybe answer some questions
yeah,
while we're waiting for the render?
yeah, we'll see what this one kicks out for us here. That'll actually take a really long time, like even at this rate. But I do want to show you what it looks like when everything is running properly. So I'm probably going to disconnect this pod from Real Illusion and let it keep running over here on its own. And then I'm going to connect that local setup and just show that real quick if that's cool.
Cool, yeah,
Oh, and
go
I'll
for it.
I'll answer questions while I set that up. If you got
Sure.
some.
All right, so we'll throw in
Um,
some questions here just from a couple people. First question is from Dale. A question of running workflows generated in the preview run in Comfy UI. He's wondering how the normal and depth maps are generated for the LoRa.
um, sorry. Okay, so the depth maps are separate from the LoRa. The LoRa is essentially your creative building block injection that we've trained. So in this case, we're only using a LoRa for this at the image level. We're basically relying on that first frame to control what we get, which is why if you spin around in a circle, that you can possibly like turn into a different character because it's based off the first frame. The AI is going to do its best, and a lot of times it can even maintain that consistency. But if you want to ensure it, then that's where you go back and train a LoRa at the video level. So instead of instead of training a LoRa for Flux, we would train a LoRa for WAN, which is a more in-depth process that requires more VRAM and takes. You can do basically image based, or you could do video based LoRas, and so like consider that kind of like using a LoRa in Kling, if any of you guys are familiar with that, where you can train it based on an image set, or you can also feed it videos if you want to use more VRAM to do
Cool.
so.
Right on. Hope that answered your question there. Are you going ahead with this or?
Yes, yes, I will. So I'm just gonna disconnect that pod. I think we'll be fine there. And I'm gonna connect my local Comfy UI setup, which is not this one. That's my RunComfy. We'll go back to that and see what we got out of the video. Hopefully, we got something good. Um, I mean, like I said, y'all, sometimes you got to tweak it a little bit. And I think that's why video is so scary because whenever you're only, taking like 10, 15 seconds to render an image, you don't think anything about making a second one. As soon as you're like, I got to wait an hour and a half to make like a 20-second video or a 10-second video, then people kind of it can be a little bit more of a daunting process. But you have to just like remind yourself that, if you wanted to render like 30 seconds of super high resolution CG footage, that will take you a little bit of time too. Um, and I think that's one thing that like people are real forgiving with their render times on CG, but like even like my graduate students, like so they will start working at the like they'll wait on an Unreal Engine render that takes them all night to get, their little short piece out. But then they wait 30 minutes to get a 15-second, very nice, super realistic animated video that's powered by AI with VFX already injected into it. And, I think people like are like, oh, because it's not a CG render that they want it to be instant, but really it's the same thing, like if you want better results, it's going to take longer and you're going to have to use more power. That's why like rendering for movies has always been like a thing. Like people used to brag about like how long it took for them to render all the data for Transformers or whatever, but now it's like, oh yeah, I did that instantly in real time, and it's a different world from that perspective. But it's kind of 720 is the new 4K, and
Hmm,
your renders in AI take a little while right now. But as the computers get better, the technology gets better, all this stuff is going to be faster.
cool.
So I've got my local instance here. All I got to do is just copy that. I'm just switching like to my local install because I want to show you this process really quick. Um, I'm going to connect that up. I'll leave my history in the same location. I'm going to go back up here to my AI render tool and I'm going to swap to my other local install version. And the only difference is I have like one control net. My control net file is inside of a Flux folder. So I have to change it up for the two or it won't recognize it because it's the same file, but it's not in the location that it's expecting to be. So anytime I swap out a workflow, I will redo my LoRas, especially if I'm changing computers. Like in this case, I just switched from a computer in the cloud to my local computer. And I'm gonna just dive in here. I have a lot of LoRa's too, so I kind of have the same problem as RunComfy on my own computer. Um, I train LoRa's for everything, and like really, if it's like AAA content you're trying to make, you probably should have image-based LoRa's. You should probably have video-based LoRa's. It just depends how complex the shot is and what you need to get it done. So I've got Flux, and then I'm gonna get Kevin. We're gonna inject him. I'll do that Kevin 26. Or you know what? Actually, let's do a Kevin. We'll just shake it up a little bit. We'll throw that Kevin 41 that I never showed you guys in there, like a little bit higher image trained set for that. So I'm gonna set that to 0.85 again. I'm gonna set that to 0.55 for Kevin. Then that's the strength value. So I'm overdriving the realism injection on Kevin. Like typically, ideally, I try to keep this within a value of 1.0, like a percentage of 100. But sometimes I will cheat the rules and just like overdrive stuff to try to get it to do what I want it to. So you'll see that we've changed our workflow. It did not save all these settings. I need to, put all my settings in again. Just getting rid of that default prompt. I'm going to check my control net. I'm going to run this at a partial range of 50% here. Also run that at a 50% value. It still has that same depth map. We're going to open that up a little bit to 30 since we lost a little bit in that last version. We'll see if we can get a little bit more of our character back here. Also need to go into our pose strength. We're going to drop that to 30% or 35%, whatever you want. It's fine for a good starting point. And it could be the opposite. Like there's certain circumstances where I may drive 50% pose and 30% depth map. It just depends on the shot that I'm trying to get and how those results are turning out for me. So let me just drop these prompts back in so we can make this a nice and easy process for you. And I'm going to paste that in. That's just my Flux prompt. We don't need a negative prompt for that. I'm going to leave that same 20 steps for 720p, 1 and 1 for my CFG and my denoise. I'm running at 1280 by 720. I'm confirming my frame rate of 24 and also confirming my project rate of 24. And then I'm going to run that 80 frames because that's what I've got blocked out. It's really 81 because I'm including frame 0. That's why I'm not doing 1 to 81. I'm doing 0 to 80. So I hit preview. That's going to give me another render, but this time, whoop, I have it covered up with the render window so you can't see all the lovely depth map generations. But that'll create it right back in my history folder. Let's see if that other video came out. Maybe we got something good over there. Oh, it is done. Let's see what we got. Oh, it looks like his leg turned around backwards at the end. Look at that. So that's where we might want to drive a little bit more pose control. And that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes that can happen with depth mapping when you're trying to do something close to the camera. It looks pretty good, but I made a mistake and now I got to re-render it. And if that took me an hour and a half, I might be upset with myself. But that's where you have to remind yourself it's just a seed value, and you have to give yourself a chance to fail with AI and to understand that expecting to get perfection out of every single render is not realistic. But getting there with a little bit of work, a little bit of fine tuning, a little bit of pushing your prompt, learning how to get your guidance where you want it, learning how to push your control net, and a couple seed values and a couple tweaks, and I'm going to get exactly what I want out of it. And you can keep the good parts. That's exciting too, you know. And like I said, like I was hoping that was going to turn out perfect, and it looks great on that first frame. Like I wanted to be perfect. But you know, sometimes that happens, and that's where I say, hey, let me maybe increase that pose strength, or you know what that's a result of? It's because our depth map fell off at the end of the video. It fell out of that range of 30%. Like I bet if we go back and look at that history folder, you know, you guys, we can confirm that. You know, like let's go back and look at that result, and I guarantee you that depth map falls off at the end, and that's why the kick doesn't
And
follow
again, that
through and he turns
flipping
backwards.
lane is determined by that focal length. So right there where it starts to go into black into that depth map, if you increase that clipping plane range in the same way that you do any camera that you're accessing the clipping plane for inside of iClone, then that's going to increase that and it's going to allow that depth map to continue to get the data in the end of the animation as well. Otherwise, you can get some pretty crazy anomalies like trading jackets or 360 legs.
I'm gonna try to see what we can do. Like eventually, what I would look like, I think if it's possible, one thing I really like would to be able to set some keyframes to control that with animation, and I think that's something we could see in the future maybe happen if it's possible. You know, I'm definitely something I'm interested in because I think that when you look at the depth map that you're getting out of iClone and Real Illusion, it smashes DW pose. Like it's not near as chunky and choppy. And if I just had the ability to literally set that clipping plane for the beginning and the end, you know, as we adapt the product and things get better, and we can have time, if there's time to inject new ideas and come up with new things as it goes, you know, maybe that's something that would be possible to be able to, you know, control that depth map and dial it in from the first frame to the last frame so that we can move the camera back and still really kind of lock that in. I think that would could definitely help. And so like it's such an exciting world where everything is open source with it and everything is adaptable and customizable to your workflow. So, if you don't like the way something works or you think that you can adapt something to work better for you, maybe you already have ideas and you're already running a custom workflow that you're excited to plug in. And, I'm saying you don't have to always, run my workflow. You can run your workflow. And that's the intention is that, you get in here, you learn to play, and you start to make really cool things while you learn this new tool. And then more advanced users, and once you've got maybe a month or so under your belt with AI and really kind of started to learn how these models work and how to drive them, that you know, you can begin to inject things that are more custom to you and your specific experience.
Yep, and we're at about hour 45 here, so we probably should be getting closer to the end of the workflow. That way we can keep this
Yeah.
contained within a 2 hour window and get to the Q&A session that we can go ahead and take some questions and talk more about what your image to video or video to video workflows can look like.
Yep.
Yeah, and guys, feel
Oh,
free to exchange your thoughts in the chat as well. I know there's a lot of good tips from some more experienced people that they're putting in the chat. So, if you can answer any of the questions that other people have, feel free to do that as well.
so I'm just going to plug these in real quick and let this launch real quick. But I really do love the depth map system coming out of iClone. I think it's quite incredible. And it's just been so much fun to play with and experimenting with new types of ControlNet and just like seeing what I'm able to do. And so I'm gonna fire um, the same prompt again, but this one's just local. And we'll let that spin up. I'm also like screen sharing and stuff, but I think I should be good. I think I got enough headroom to be able to handle this without if I start turning into static or something, I'll make it stop. Because it is about to be using 100% of my GPU power in a second. I may cut it off as soon as it gets to that point. I just want to show you what it looks like if it's actually processing everything here the way you really want it to, guys. Like, so basically, we're loading in our clips, we're loading in our diffusion model, and then it's going to switch over to your K sampler and start loading your samples, just like it does with Flux. And it's really beautiful when it happens. And everything's working the way it as intended. But like I said, like you might run into some issues. A new update might kick something to where, it's a beta. Like half the nodes in our Comfy UI have beta on them, because they're still beta for WAN VACE 2.1. Like we're all like, give me WAN VACE 2.2, ready, I'm ready to go. And they're still considering WAN 2.1 VACE to be a beta product. So we got a beta in Comfy and a beta in iClone. And, it's super exciting to be on that knife's blade and play with these new tools. But so you can see everything's loading in, all's going good. Anybody we can take questions now if you want. Like that's pretty much the whole workflow. Always remember, guys, if you have pods up, so if I'm done with those pods, I could always go back and, render more images, but in this particular case, I probably just want to kind of stop paying for it because I'm done working with it. I'll leave this Comfy UI up for a second. But for those that are running on RunPods, I just want to show you something on that side too. So when you're done running your pod, like ours actually should be spun up now. So if we wanted to launch one of these, like you'll see that my RunPod 02, the one that we created here, is now ready. And you have that Comfy UI set up there. And I'm going to drag my workflow in here the exact same way that I would in RunComfy. So literally no difference once you're up and running at this point, other than that if you want to load your LoRAs in, you have to put them in your Jupyter lab, and that's really that last kind of thing that I feel like I kind of left out there that I wanted to show you. Um, we add our token to get into our Jupyter lab, and we get that from our logs. Kind of same thing. Yeah, I'm just going to paste that in. You can create a new password if you want, something that's easier for you to remember that you don't have to go get out of the logs. But this is going to be basically the same, like similar to how we have our assets over here, like Comfy UI, and then you got all your models. With RunPod, it's just going to live in your Jupyter lab over here. So we have like Comfy UI and models and our LoRA folders or whatever we want here. And then you'll see in this particular instance, I only have Flux Realism. So if I wanted Camilla or whatever Kevin LoRA that I was trying to use, I would have to drop that in there to make that work.
Hey, sorry, Max, did you guys have Don here is mentioning do we have a diagram of the step-by-step guide for this workflow? I think we showed a little bit of something last week, right?
Yeah, for the 2 weeks ago, we did the Flux One dev setup,
Right.
where we really kind of went down and broke down each part of it. Um, Another great video is like from a complete beginner to iClone is Benji AI's video that he put out. He was, like he'd only been in iClone for like 4 hours when he was running his AI renders. And he was able to get all the way to like crowd sims and motion director within 4 hours. Like how insane is that? Like for a new user that's never really used 3D to be using new characters, sending them through the whole character creator pipeline into iClone, adding custom animation, and then going in and starting to drive crowd sims within 4 hours of ever touching the product.
And
Awesome.
so
Like that's
this
so cool.
this doesn't run 4 hours. We should probably move on to the rest of the Q&A.
Yeah, sorry, I can talk about AI all day, guys. Like if you let me go, I'll spin me up and let me go.
For everyone who's interested in that video that Max just mentioned, I just put the link in the chat window, the Benji AI video here.
He
Um,
also shows local, so
yeah,
for you local users.
and I think you mentioned Benji AI's whole channel is actually really good for AI education as well.
It's fantastic. Like that's
Yeah,
where I follow him for a lot of his workflows. I would say some of his stuff's a little more advanced. So if you're like ground level brand new to this stuff, another guy that I really like is Pixaroma was like he kind of held my hand through the first couple months until I was ready to like watch Benji stuff as well. Um
you said
like I like
Pixaroma. How do you spell that?
Pixaroma, let's see, I'll pull it up on screen actually because he's really good too. Like
Oh, I think I got it. Yeah,
yeah,
guy with a beard and
Pixarama.
funky hair. Oh,
It's a green. It's this right here.
the green crown. Yeah.
Pixaroma, like this, like Pixaroma. But like, so this is where I actually first started before I found Benji's content. Um, and like he kind of really got me off the ground and helped me understand like a lot of basics and from growing from like SD 1.5 through like SD 3.5, and then I got a hold of Flux, and then I started learning how to use like styles and ControlNet and LoRAs and playing with High Dream and like just anything and everything. And so like it doesn't have there's so many great like content creators and people out there like creating tutorials that can get you up and started with Comfy UI and learning custom workflows and playing with things. And like I said, just because you don't have the best thing on earth like a $27,000 graphics card, like don't let that stop you from learning the basics and starting to get this going. But
All right. James mentions here that he didn't get the information from last week's Zoom session. James, you can probably just email us and get that. Otherwise, we do have it on the archives, the webinar archives that I posted earlier. For those of you who aren't aware, if you go to the webinar page, you can go to the archives and get all of the Reillusion webinars that have been in the past from there as well. So I'll just link that in just a moment here. Webinar archives. There you go. All right. Dale asks, is the API call to a workflow configurable in the iClone UI?
it's not really an API call, but if you had a custom API call inside of Comfy UI, it wouldn't. I don't think that would stop you from running like API based workflows. Like let's say you were like trying to inject like a Nano Banana API or something like that. If you had that running inside a Comfy UI, like through Gemini or a custom plugin, like so, for example, I wrote a custom node the other week ago just to inject like Chat GPT or OpenAI API call like in between certain parts of my workflow, so it could take like an image or a prompt and then an instruction set and do whatever I want it to do on the back side of that. Um, that doesn't work through like your standard Chat GPT applicate like account. So like if you got a premium Chat GPT, you do actually have to load up credits to like your Open API call. Or like if you're doing that with Gemini or something like that, you'd probably have to do something similar. But as long as you're comfortable with running that API and you know how to do that setup for Comfy UI, there's nothing that should stop you from injecting it as long as it supports the workflow that you're trying to work with.
Awesome. James in the
Like,
chat mentioned here as well. Pixel AI Labs has great courses as well on YouTube. So for those of you who are interested in that.
oh yeah, I haven't checked them out. I'll have to check them out. I'm always looking for new resources and new tunnels of knowledge. It's quite exciting.
Here's a good question from Rainer. Mentions, is it possible to initiate camera cuts within the rendered clip through prompt and LoRA? Have you messed around with camera cuts at
Um,
all?
Like, so usually when I'm getting camera cuts, it's because I've tried to do something that it can't handle. And so like I usually don't want camera cuts. I would pretty much probably treat that as a separate shot.
Hmm.
Because like most of the time I'm working, I'm constantly targeting like a 5 to 10 second image, like really most of the time. Because even if you do run like those long length workflows, like where it creates a new start and end frame or like start frame on that 81 frames, like sometimes you can get a little bit of distortion or blur as it transitions between those clips. And so that does happen. But like, you know, you definitely want to, edit things. And I try to, like I said, I try to think of it like, I mean, if you're watching most movies, like sure, you might get a long, like camera shot that goes a really long ways or a 30-second shot every now and then. But especially in most action sequences and things like that, most shots aren't much longer than 5 to 10 seconds, anyways.
Cool, cool. All right. Don asks, can the Comfy UI models be installed on another SSD drive instead of the C boot drive to save disk space for your operating system?
Yes, you can actually install your whole Comfy UI on another drive if you want. Like so I have a F drive on here that's a portable SSD that I literally unplug sometimes from this desktop and take to like my other desktops or like at my office or at the school or on my laptop or wherever I'm going. Or if I want to just like clone something for a student that has something going that's like working locally, like it's sometimes it's easier for me to just show up with my whole drive and just move everything to their computer to get them set up as like a template instead of having to manually or explain to someone how to manually install every single bit of this from the beginning.
All right. George or Jorge, I guess, has a link here that questioning if this is Kevin in the link from Civitai there. I don't think it is. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but I don't think it is Kevin. So that's just my thoughts on that image there. But thanks for that, Jorge. Tim Ehlers has a suggestion here, I guess, more. Can we get an auto range checkbox that just sets the range from closest to furthest in the loaded scene? Yeah, that's really good feedback, Tim, and we encountered that issue as you saw earlier. Any sort of issues that you guys have or any feedback that
It's a
you
good
have for
idea.
us? Yeah, it is. Excellent idea. Thanks for that, Tim. Anything you guys want to suggest, let us know in the feedback form. Whether it be features or anything like that. I encourage you to send that back to us because we take your feedback seriously and we like to develop our tools according to, um, really good customer feedback like this. So thanks for that, Tim. Um, all right. What's the bit depth of the depth map? Um, Jorge asks as
Hmm.
well.
I would have to look at it. I guess I could open one in like Photoshop or something and find out. I haven't even really looked at it to be honest. That wasn't something that I really had like dug into, but like I said, let's check it out. History.
Question from Nikhil, or waiting for that to load. He says, could you speak to the architectural workflow for a bit in the simplest terms? So he says sources from a video format flow into a model. They get modified by image LoRAs and then video LoRAs and then processing nodes and output nodes. Is that
So, essentially, you you get your CG content ready, you've got your scene ready, you've already trained your LoRas. Those are like kind of pre-processed stuff that you have to do, and we're trying to establish that first image that we need in the sequence from our base render. They're eight. It looks like they're 8-bit. Sorry on that depth
okay?
map.
Right on.
But so we're basically going to get our base render content ready, and then we're looking at moving towards an image workflow. And so from that image workflow, I need a base image that I'm going to generate whatever control net sources that I want to turn on with. So whether that be depth or canny or pose. And there's nothing that says that you have to have all three of those in your workflow. If you're only going to use one, you could build a simple workflow and just have one control net source. And it's just going to give you that one option in iClone for your custom build. But so I'm trying to get it like like the way I teach it from the get-go is usually to understand the prompting side of it first and to be able to control like kind of what you're getting prompt wise and understanding that structure. And then from there, I like to inject LoRa to control consistency. And then I think the third kind of slightly more complicated facet for both image and video is going to be your control net. And so then from there, you're going to hit your K sampler, which is where you're going to lock in your seed value. You're going to lock in how many steps that you want to process it at. And then you're going to lock in your guidance and your denoise. And then from there, it's going to hit your VAE encoder where it's going to basically go from that latent space to actually moving that into image space. And in this case, we're creating, we're coming back out with an image at 1280 by 720. And so since we've already rendered out of iClone our depth map pose, our depth map or our pose or both, and or we could also have canny. So it would be a third control net source here. And I do think that there is a lot of merit in keeping it simple. If you stack too much control net, it's going to look really flat. It's not going to look realistic. It's going to look cartoony and you're going to overdrive everything. So I really like the reason I show image first is like everybody wants to get the video, but if you can't render your image to be perfect, like exactly like you want it, then you're not really, in my opinion, ready to go to video other than to start playing with it to just to see video and kind of maybe feel excited about that process. But I think you need to kind of understand how to combine prompt and how to adjust your strength of your LoRas and how to adjust your strength of your control net and the types of control net at that phase to render that final image. And then once we have that, I pretty much feel like I'm 95% of the way there. I can take that same image if I need to and use it as a source image if I want to use that. Um, which is what we're doing from iClone. We're rendering out that image, and that says this is my first image. Then from there, we're also rendering out these videos. So this is the image from Flux that we're saying, hey, make my video look like this. This is the first frame of my content. Um, and then we say, how do we want to control it and what do those sources look like? Is pose value good enough? Is depth map good enough on its own? Is my character doing a complex motion? Does it overlap another character? Does it go on screen or off screen? And so like you can tell specifically by this, if you have no character on screen in the first frame and you're trying to do a walk on, then you would either have to use reference as like a last frame or you would have to train a video LoRa so it knew what your character looked like while it was off screen. Like you can't really cheat that. You have to be able to show it what that character looks like to be able to have the ability to maintain that consistency throughout the depth range or throughout the frame range while only using control like pose and depth based on our first image generation to get that end result. And that's like really what's happening, under the hood. Like we could say, hey, and think that we're literally transferring this video and AI is just magically, making all this happen for us. But it's because we're breaking that down into components that VFX artists have used for years to control things,
All right,
like
so
depth map and pose.
cool. That's super
Sorry.
comprehensive explanation. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was like it's basically it's not a simple process. That's
Yeah.
the long and short of it. It's you're doing a complex image process that's entirely custom, and
Hmm.
you're doing a complex video process that's entirely custom.
Actually,
And
it's the long and
luckily,
long of it.
yeah, it's the long,
Short
long,
answer is the
long
short answer.
version. We can go
Yeah.
for another hour talking about that,
Yeah.
Well, we're
um,
all early adopters, and the technology is still in its
yeah,
infancy right now, and so things are
and
a bit
the
more complicated. It's not for the common or casual hobbyist at this point. So,
let me get that sorted with that issue with the run pod. Like, let's figure that out, and we'll provide you with at least this as a template workflow so you have somewhere to start working.
right on.
Um, yeah.
Couple of short questions here. We're gonna do these and then we're gonna end off here.
Yeah.
Jorge asks again, what about the last middle, last frame workflows for those of us that have poor GPUs? And Nikhil asks a very similar question. How are you getting to the last image and how different can that be? So that those two questions are connected.
So they can be different, but like that's where if they're way, way, way too different, where you might get a camera cut. Like where the if the AI doesn't know what to do, it's gonna cut the camera, probably. But so I honestly like to use like Flux context or something to get my second image. I will use Flux One Dev sometimes, but if I like to do my initial image generation with Flux One Dev because I think it looks better out of the box and the background I think is higher quality, like with a little bit less noise from the results I've got out of it. I just I like Flux One Dev. I don't know. I think it's a really pretty model. Quinn's exciting too. They just
Hmm.
dropped ControlNet. But
Yep.
I moved to context because that's going to allow me to create that second end frame image like very, very easily if I needed that for that additional guidance. And
Awesome.
like I said, like you can get that base process and you get that final render, but there's nothing that says you can't iterate like at any level and use all of your old tools, that you're familiar with, like video editing and color correction and compositing.
Yeah.
Um, None of these things are off the table just because you're using AI.
Awesome. All right, we'll follow up with one final question from Nikhil, and then we'll end off here. He says, if I want to use a camera move from Unreal to drive the camera movement in Comfy UI, is that standardized or prompt based?
If you want to move the camera, so that is one thing that iClone's ControlNet is particularly good at is actually being able to kind of help you control that camera. Like it's some of the best results I've seen of being able to like actually like fly the camera around the character. Like literally in a circle. Like Melvin, one of the devs at Real Illusion, had a super awesome shot that was like a police officer with a pistol and the camera's like rotating all the way around him, and that was like one of
Hmm,
the first times I had seen like that exaggerated of a move with that level of character retention. And that was like whenever I was super impressed and I knew that it was something to be excited about.
very cool. All right, we got some feedback from Alberto. Thanks for that. Just wanted to acknowledge Alberto gave us a nice long paragraph of feedback. So thanks for that, Alberto. We hear you. And give us some feedback, more feedback if you want in the feedback form we're going to send out. All right, so I think this is where we're going to end it off here. We've gone a little over a couple hours. So thanks to everyone who stuck with us here. And thanks so much to Max for his comprehensive, detailed explanations, walking us through the whole process, showing us some troubleshooting and everything. Really awesome stuff. Thanks so much, Max. And thanks, James, for being here with us as well. Always awesome to have you guys along for the ride. And for all of you who are interested, you can find these guys at Georgia State University. Again, professors of practice. I think both of you are also certified trainers on the Learning Center as well. So if you guys want to learn more, you can get in touch with them via that way. We are sending this out as well to you guys, the recording later on. James Martin from Actor Capture as well. I guess we should mention their motion capture company. So if you guys have any projects that you need motion capture for, I want to collaborate with actorcapture.com, just how it sounds. Check out that site and get in touch with these fine gentlemen here. Anything you guys want to say to sign off?
Yeah, just be sure to check us out at actorcapture.com if you're interested in our VFX workflows, our motion capture and real-time on-set services, and certainly how we connect to the industry, both film, game, and television. We're working a lot on independent film and also on AAA projects. So it really doesn't matter the size of the budget and the size of the creative ask. Actor Capture's got a lot of solutions and certainly some big brains like Max.
Right on. How about you, Max?
So, guys, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg of getting your feet wet with AI, starting to play with these custom workflows and like learning some of the limitations. If you face problems, like you're probably headed in the right direction every now and then. It's new things, it's exciting. You got to learn to kind of troubleshoot a little bit. Their custom workflows, but I think it's going to be really exciting where we're able to take these tools and where we're kind of going next. Hopefully more advanced workflows for getting our characters talking with lip sync driving and getting some of those longer videos and cool things like that in the future. So, if there's more things like that that you guys are excited to see, let us know, and we'll see what we can do and try to make sure that we're getting workflows and stuff out there that you're excited to learn and inject into your pipelines.
Sweet. Thanks for
So
that, Max. Thanks again so much, gentlemen, for being here today, sharing your knowledge with all of us. And thank you everyone for sticking around. Be sure to fill out the survey form I'm going to send off to you. We'll send you also a recording of this video. We're also going to send you the chat because there's a lot of good tips in the chat that some people had as well. So we'll send you a bunch of information there. So yeah, for all of us from Reallusion, thanks so much again. And everyone have a great weekend. Thanks, James and Max. And we'll see you guys later.
Later.
Bye, guys.
later, thanks guys. See you next time.